Morning, everyone. Welcome. This is Joe Scarice, host and founder of the Creative Birth Strategy Club, here to provide hopefully some education, strategy, and opportunities. And we're here every Saturday morning, 8 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and every Sunday morning, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. So we'll get started here in just a few minutes. Today's discussion is the master of art of underwriting real estate. And I think there's no secret to it. It's called hard work. And there's a lot of people out there that try to take claim that it's easy. It's not. There's a lot of things that go on with underwriting that you need to, really stay proficient with. So we'll break it down a little bit. We'll get into it. Real excited about our sponsors that we have that have been here committed to working with us here at the Creative Birth Strategies podcast, which you could find us at creativebirthstrategies.com. And you can find us on YouTube, Facebook, X, Buzzsprout, Amazon, Spotify. We're here to really hopefully provide a very consistent theme of education, networking, and opportunities. So I'm pinging some people in, see if we can get some people up and with us this morning, and then we'll get into our discussion. We'll talk a little bit about the market as well and where it's going. Been a very busy week for the most part. So let's get started here. The master of art of underwriting real estate. So hang on 1 second here. Let's get started here. Give me 1 minute. All right. So basically, master of underwriting real estate, mastering the art of underwriting real estate involves a deep understanding of financial analysis, market dynamics, risk assessment, and valuation techniques. We'll navigate through that process and see where things go. So give me 1 minute here. It's kind of a little strange. So we don't have anybody in our clubhouse room just yet. So we'll see what's going on here. I know it's not private, so I'm not really sure what's going on. But let's dive into our sponsors, of course, first. I always want to thank Perkatech with Yordell Perkins, our social media strategist, MB Capital, our unsecured business line of credit referral program, Realty 411, Linda Pelagas, our national publication that provides insight to real estate investors and professionals throughout the country. And we're happy to collaborate with her on Philly Realty 411. And basically, we also have Lendmark Capital, which is who I work for. We're a direct private lender in the asset-based lending space, and we're here to provide hopefully some insight. So I think we're up and running. Something a little strange, but hey, we'll progress forward as always. So today's discussion. Well, first let's go back to upcoming event. We have Realty 411 in Philadelphia starting April 13th at the iconic Mummer Museum in South Philadelphia. We have a little over about 100 people registered so far, so it's a pretty exciting event. And I think it's going to be worthwhile to attend. There's going to be about 10 or 12 speakers. We're going to have a live podcast from there as well. Yordell and myself will be hosting that. And we'll probably start that a little early, get there about 7 a.m. and get set up and get ripping and running at around 8 a.m. But I think what we're doing here is just showing a consistency. This is our second annual Philadelphia event, which I'm excited about. And we're here just to provide a consistent and continuous stream of education in real estate. I think people really want that as an opportunity. And I think it's really rewarding and awarding at the same time. So let's talk about some mortgage news updates, and let's tie into the market this week. So this week was an interesting week. Rates hovered around 7%. A lot of calls in regards to pricing out rates. Depending on who you talk to, rates were either higher than average, and some were lower. So I was seeing rates coming in somewhere between 6.75 and 7.125 right now in refinance. And the sweet spot was around 70%. If you went to 75, depending on credit score and the DSCR of the property, you were probably hovering around 7.125. Multifamily, I'm seeing some multifamily presence coming in. Rates are still, in those 6s and 7s right now. Not a lot of opportunity I'm seeing on the multifamily space, 5 through 25. but obviously, hopefully, that will change in time going into the spring market. But rates hovered and closed on Friday around 6.91. So not a bad week, not a great week, but going into spring market, I don't see a big inventory push. It's making me a little concerned. I think it's really going to stay more in the landlord space. I don't think home buyers are jumping off the sidelines to buy properties with rates still hovering around 7%. And I think, what happened during COVID kind of threw a monkey in a wrench with a lot of people thinking that, hey, rates are going to come back down one of these days coming up soon. And I just don't see that happening. I just don't see it happening. I just see a very there's just a dismay that rates are not going to come back down there, and you really don't want to see rates there. Okay, you really want to see rates around that 6 to 7% mark. That means we're trying to battle off inflation. We're trying to battle off layoffs. We're trying to battle off uh, economics. Because basically, what happens with economics is if the rate goes any lower, it could beat up the banks really rough right now. So you got to be very careful about that. So hoping for lower rates is not as smart as you then saying. Okay, so and that ties into the underwriting discussion we're going to have today. But a couple other articles that caught my eye: rents across U.S. grew for the first time in 6 months. Only Arizona saw some price drops but other than in every other metro. So rents are now starting to come back up a little bit. The spring market, people are starting to move, and I think there's better rental stock coming to the market. So I think that's a very unique circumstance and article that I posted that on my LinkedIn and my Facebook as well. Another article that caught my eye: buyer demand brisk, but supply side challenges remain. So I really feel we're in a buyer's market. Depending on where you're at, whether it's suburban or urban markets, I think we're in a very unique space right now where I think we're truly in a buyer's market, depending on how long the property's on the market, the condition of the property, and then obviously uh, the demand. Okay, so in certain markets, comparatively in the suburban markets, I see much more much more activity with newer real estate inventory stock. And if the property goes past 60 or 90 days, you're starting to just see it sit out there. It's not getting a lot of offers, and it's getting a little stagnant. So it'll be interesting to see by May, what the market will bear in regards to values. Comps are starting to kind of level off, and values are starting to level off with appraisals. If you don't have enough sold and settles, the appraiser doesn't have something to grab onto. So some interesting articles that caught my eye there. So let's dive into our subject today: Master of Art, Underwriting Real Estate. So mastering the art of real estate involves a deep understanding of financial analysis, market dynamics, and risk assessment, and valuation techniques. Learning the fundamentals concepts of real estate underwriting includes cash flow analysis, net operating income, cap rates, and internal rate of return. Familiarize yourself with real estate terminology such as gross potential income, effective gross income, operating expenses, debt service, and cash on cash return. Develop proficiency in financial modeling using spreadsheets or specialized software, which we offer in regards to understanding and underwriting your deals. So, understanding how to create income and expense projections or calculating cash flows and performing sensitive analysis is very important in underwriting. Learn to analyze historical financial statements, rent rolls, operating expenses, assessing the property's performance, and identifying trends. Do some market research, gain insights into the local market dynamics, including supply and demand fundamentals, vacancy rates, rental trends, and comparable property sales. Understand the impact of factors such as interest rates, employment levels, population growth, and regulatory changes on real estate values. Evaluate also the risk associated with the property, such as tenant credit risk, market risk, liquidity risk, and operational risk. Conducting a thorough due diligence, including property inspections, environmental assessments, title searches, and legal reviews to identify potential issues that may impact the investment. Learn various methods of property evaluations, including the income approach, sales comparison approach, and cost approach. Understanding the nuances of each valuation method and when to apply it based on a property type, market conditions, and availability of data. Familiarize yourself with different types of financing options. Obviously, there's traditional lenders, there's asset-based lending, there's just lost my track here. Give me one second. Commercial loans, government sponsor programs, and private equity. Learn to structure debt financing deals, negotiate terms with lenders, and analyze the impact of leverage on investment returns. The past couple of days, I've been really digging into underwriting DSCR with a lot of clients. I had one client that was looking more for an interest only, was looking for a 1-year prepay. Another one was looking to make sure the origination made sense based on the buying the rate down. We had deeper discussions and understanding what was going on in the market. So people are just not just taking a loan just to take a loan. They're really looking into what's going on with the market because they really want to understand because they're not looking the short term, they're looking at the long-term play of these deals. So again, having a deeper discussion with your lender is extremely important because I think you don't want to be too short-sighted in evaluating those deals. So stay updated on industry trends, emerging technologies, the best practices through professional development opportunities, workshops, seminars, and conferences. I'm here in East Stroudsburg, Pennsylvania. I was at an event last night. Really great. A lot of people, 100+ people on a Friday night networking, giving insight, giving direction, strategies, talking about their strategies and their goals. Mastering the aspects of real estate underwriting ties into that. You got to be better equipped assessing investment opportunities, mitigating risk, and optimizing returns in a dynamic world of real estate investing. Remember, the practical experience and continuous learning are essential for honing your skills in this field. So going to good educational events where you're going to really not be sold, but being provided understanding of the market. What is underwriting, right? In simple terms, underwriting represents a process in which the side takes a risk, determining the specifics, just how risk they are willing to take. The level of risk corresponds directly to set the premium that is required. The process is what we refer to understanding risk, underwriting risk. The underwriting process is an extremely important financial aspect of real estate investing, including both insurance and investing. You got to understand the insurance of the property, the taxes of the property, the rental market of the property. What are the common area maintenance impact to you, and how that's going to impact what you're doing with the property? What is the cash on cash return? What is the DSCR of the property? If you're buying it to renovate, fix to rent, what are the repair costs? Are you taking contingencies into the repair costs as well? It's just not exact science. You have to be transactional in making things happen with understanding a property. You got to underwrite multiple properties to better understand. And understanding cash reserves, meaning, just because you could refinance a property, what if, a lender is going to want to see 6 months of PITIA on that property? Now, is that all you should have in reserves? No other contingencies? So you really got to think about not just about if you're cashing a property out and maxing out the loan to value. What if the property goes vacant? Do you have money to support that deal? Does it make sense to take all that money out or leave some money in? You got to weigh out the cost benefit relationship and the time frame of underwriting. So if you're doing pre-underwriting on a deal that you haven't bought yet, the clock's ticking. Somebody else is underwriting that property just as well as you are. So you need to put your numbers together quickly. And that's where our worksheets come into place, where we're providing those opportunities for you. So who can make use of an underwriting process? Well, anybody, a good investor, a newbie, an experienced, they're doing a pre-underwrite to that property. They're looking at the potential rents to the property, potential tax impact, insurance impact, repair costs, what are the after repair value. If you're noticing, I'm not bringing up what the list price is. Don't really care about that. I care about how I'm buying the property based on the after repair value, based on the repair costs, and based on what I'm buying it at. And then I get into the nitty and gritty of understanding, does this property make sense to hold once we renovate and stabilize the property? Who can make use of an underwriting process? Well, you really need to tie in a couple key factor people that are in your circle. One, a good real estate agent. Two, a good lender. Three, a good insurance agent. Four, a good home inspector and GC, because you're going to need those guys and gals to help you understand what your numbers look like. It's really strange. Nobody's coming into the room. I hope people can see this room. I've been sharing it, but it's a little strange. Nobody's really seeing that. But hey, we'll keep moving forward. It's very unusual. We're not seeing a lot of people coming into our room. Typically, we have somewhere between 50 and 100 people, but hey, I digress. So let's get back to our discussion on underwriting. You got to vet the property. You got to do a preliminary vetting process in case of like lenders, in most cases, like myself, I'll pre-underwrite the file with you to make sure that the numbers work. I'll look at the acquisition price. I'll look at the repair costs. I'll look at the after repair value. I'll then look at the debt service coverage ratio of what the hypothetical would look like if you're going to hold the property. We'll look at estimates and projections. We'll look at the construction breakdown. Does the construction repairs make sense? Maybe even get a secondary eyes looked at it. Sometimes I get my executive director to look at a deal. Does it make sense? Why are these numbers not working? Understanding the comparable pricings. These are important things you need to look. And then, then there's once you get the property stabilized, then you got to understand who the tenant is. What does your tenant look like? What is that going to be? Section 8 is it going to be regular market rent, or is it the same thing? Then there's legal tasks. You got to look at the leasing process and the responsibility of managing that tenant out long term and short term. So you got to really understand, what is the occupancy history of that property or that area or that neighborhood or that community. Is it going to stay empty for a couple of months before you vet the right tenant? Then another thing you have to worry about is the appraiser. Is the appraisal going to come in? Is the values there that you're expecting to see? It's really strange that nobody's in this room.
Hey, Joe, do you hear and see me in the room?
No, I don't see anybody in the room.
Yeah, so all I see is me, you, and then there is Andrea, Jeff Falai, Matt, and Manning. So I see there's a total of 6 people in the room, so you may have a larger audience. The system may just be glitching.
Yeah, it's really weird. I'm gonna leave. Are you up top here? Because I don't even see you. So I'm gonna leave and come back in. Give me 1 minute. I'm gonna leave and come back in. Hold on. There you are. You're back. Are you there, Joe?
I'm back and better than ever, baby.
Oh my gosh. I was like, what the hell's going on here? I was like, I wasn't sure I didn't see anybody.
Yeah.
It was,
So I
it,
mean, I don't. All I see is 4 people in the audience, but I'm sure that there's more. So you're talking to a grander audience.
oh yeah, it's really bizarre. So, I mean, how long have you been in? Have you been in from the beginning?
I got in around 8:07 because I woke up late today.
So let's go over and talk about underwriting. I mean, I know you're a big fan of underwriting, right? So what's your thoughts on the underwriting process today? Where do you see the misses that a lot of newer investors are doing? And where do you see some of the misses from the experienced investors, for that matter?
So, listen, underwriting, number one, right? We've been talking about how tight the market is, and you have to. You're not going to get your underwriting done in the first property you see on the market, right? So when I'm actively searching for properties, even when I'm not, just to keep myself fresh in it, I'll sit there and I'll just jot down the numbers, and I use OneNote um, because I just like to have my numbers with me so I can look at a property and keep track of it. Um, and I'll jot all my numbers down and just see what the deal is like. It helps when properties come on and go off on and off the market. But listen, I mean, underwriting a deal, some people who are not as technical, we call it analyzing the deal, right? Um, it's the bread and butter of real estate investing, right? If you don't know what your numbers are, like, how are you going to be successful? How do you know? How are you going to go to a lender like you or any bank and say, "Hey, I'm buying this property and I'm going to rent it out, or I'm going to fix and flip it, or and it's going to be it's going to be a great it's going to be a great deal, and I'm going to cash flow." If you can't show them that, right? One thing that you mentioned is PITIA, right? Principal, interest, taxes, insurance, association fees, if any. Um, a lot of people disregard condos because of the association fees, but sometimes if you do the numbers, it surprises you. I will now have 4 properties that are part of associations, and even with their fees, I'm cash flowing $400-500 a month.
Yeah.
So, I mean, I wouldn't just shake it away. I mean, some people use that 1% rule and that 2% rule. That's garbage. Uh, if you're not sitting down and doing the numbers, whether it's using your spreadsheet, um, you know, you're going to find yourself in trouble, right? There's no real rule to this. I've been asked the rule by newbies, oh, so is it, 50% of your rent that you account for expenses? And I was like, no, I just go based off the numbers that I do. And I think that's the way to do it. Another thing that I see that investors, experienced or not, go through is they'll account for maintenance, uh, vacancy, and management, usually 10% each. And at the end, they'll say, my property cash flow is $100. Now, everybody's going to say, well, you're accounting for maintenance and management vacancy. So what's the big deal? Why is that wrong? Because at the end of 10 months, if you have a 1-year lease, at the end of 10 months, you have 100%. If you have a 2-month vacancy, that's a problem. Let's say your rent is $2,000 a month and you have a $3,000 repair, and you've been taking that extra cash flow and going to Atlantic City with it, or Vegas, that's a problem for you. So, I just don't, uh, I don't do my numbers that way, right? I take my number as a whole. Uh, I set money aside. I get a nest egg. My portfolio as a whole contributes to that nest egg. And that's what prepares me for the rainy days and the repairs and the vacancies. And it allows me to get my properties back up and running quickly if I need to.
So you brought up a very good point, the condo townhome investment. Do you find that more appealing for a newer investor because it's more of a controlled atmosphere? There's other people involved with the same complex. Is that more of a pro, you think, for a newer investor because it's kind of a cookie cutter cutout unit where you go to some of these targeted older family owned properties, they're very aged, they're hard to find the problems up front from the GC perspective and home inspection perspective, and anything can happen. Foundate massive more. I think there's more problems with a single family individual home than a condo or townhome. Have you found the same pros and cons? And do you see condos and townhomes as a better starting point for a newer investor because it's kind of in a controlled unit type of atmosphere? There's certain things you do to it to repair it. There's a certain type of tenant. There's a certain type of legalities with that. Some thoughts to that, Joe, as well.
Yeah, I mean, there's ways to look at with the condo and the townhome. Um, but I could also tell you, I have 2 townhomes, right? One I had to replace the roof on, and the other one, 6 months after owning it, the tenant sent me a picture, and there was a waterfall in the basement. Then I had to spend $10,000 in getting that waterproofing done. So it doesn't 100% save you. It all depends on the community. Then there's the condos, and there's the condos that um, are like garden apartments, if you will.
Yeah.
And then there's the condos that are in buildings, like apartment buildings. And you really need to look at the upkeep of the place. The other thing that you have to look at is the stability and the financials of the condo of the homeowner association, because there's also a risk that goes along with that. If they need a major repair, there's going to be a special assessment that's going to come your way if uh, if they're not balanced correctly, right? Um, I wouldn't necessarily say it's for the faint of heart, right? Um, I can tell you insurance is much cheaper on a condo than a townhome because of the liabilities and and another issues that you have with a single family home. Um, but I wouldn't turn around and point the novice in one way or another. I would just go based on how the numbers work.
Yes.
Knowing that there's liability, you have to budget for more, right? On the two condos that I'm buying, one that I bought and one that I'm closing on now, I don't have to worry about the roof. I don't have to worry about the maintenance on the outside. I don't have to worry about the sidewalk. I don't have to worry about any of that. But I'm also paying $250 a month each for someone else to worry about that. So it's a different ball game. Your numbers have to be done differently. Uh, instead of paying $900 a month in insurance, I'm paying $275 a month. So I, there's pros and cons to everything that you do, but HOAs can sometimes turn around and say, okay, we're not rentals anymore. They have to have a meeting and everything. So you want to go into a condominium or an HOA where it's known as rentals, where people buy there to rent. Um, and that's how I would look at it.
So are you taking a deeper dive into the occupancy history of the property as well? Like, I mean, yeah, do you look at what the timelines of the vacancy of the property, right? Are you taking any of that in consideration? Are you looking in the area, hey, I'm going to buy this condo or I'm going to buy this house, and there's not a lot of for rents. That could be a good sign, that could be a bad sign. Or I see a lot of for rents and they're sitting out there for 2 or 3, 4 months. Have you dived into that part before diving into buying a property in the past recent years?
So yeah, I do. Um, I have alerts on my phone on houses for sale and rents and rentals that come up, and I watch those rentals for the amounts that they're at, um, and see if they're reducing rents, see if another rental's coming up in the area that's going higher or lower. Um, I can tell you that the rental markets that I'm in are pretty strong. I know that there are rentals markets that are weakening, but you have to always study a market, right? Don't just go based on what a realtor tells you on comps. And I'm going to tell you that comping out a rental now is really tough nowadays, even for a realtor, because not everybody's going on the MLS, right? For example, I use Turbo Tenant, which is an app that also collects my rent.
Mhm.
Uh, it lists my rental on 20 different websites. So like apartments.com, Zillow, realtor.com, and Trulia.com. Um, it lists them all there, but then when it's rented, it just comes off the market.
Yeah.
It just disappears. So a realtor is not going to see that it closed, right? And the same thing if you use like rental websites that'll track your rentals. One that I've used is Rentometer. Bigger Pockets even has like a rent estimator. They just tell you what was listed. They don't
Yeah.
tell you and when. They don't tell you that it was rented.
Yeah.
So that's a challenge, right?
Joe, what's the biggest challenge I'm seeing? And nobody's really wants to talk about it. They're kind of skirting it and they're trying to do things unethically. Okay. I really feel we're in for an awakening on values from an appraisal perspective. Appraisals are starting to come back light, not enough to make people nervous, but if you don't have enough sales, where are you getting your comps from to come up with an appraisal value? If you don't have a ton of sold and settled, an appraiser just can't make up a number. Okay. That's going to impact what you think your after repair value is, or even your stabilized value is. And I don't think people are staying I'm very concerned. Like every appraisal I'm seeing is not matching up with what people think the value is. And I have clients right now that are saying, "Hey, listen, I'd like to pick this appraiser." I'm like, I can't pick an appraiser. And then even if you that appraiser is picked, they can't do something out of sorts to not justify the value because it'll just get hammered in underwriting if it looks somewhat fraudulent or questionable. Then it's going to get evaluated by the management service. It's going to get evaluated and pushed down in value because if they're reaching, you're going to have a problem here. Okay, so I foresee within the next over the next 6 months a 5 to 10% retraction in values because I just don't see enough volume to justify some of these forced values based on renovations to a property. So
Right. No, you're 100% right on that. So, um, people picking their appraisers. That was back in 2008, right? And that's what got us in trouble. Um, and then they put that middleman in that just does like spin the bottle and you find your appraiser. But um, yeah, no, if there's not many appraisals in your area. I mean, listen, condos don't really move that quickly.
yeah,
So townhomes either. I mean, I had a similar problem. I have a townhome that's in a community that's the only four-bedroom in that townhome community. It also is the only unit with an elevator that goes from the basement to the first floor to the second floor. Because an older couple lived there and they built it, and when the houses were being built, they were the original owners. And instead of having a garage, they wanted another room that was made a fourth bedroom. So getting an appraisal when I burned that property was a challenge, and the appraiser appraised the house as a three-bedroom house. And I started arguing with him. He said, "Well, there's no other comps within miles. That's a townhome," and it kind of screwed my burr up a little bit. Where I still had 20,000 in the deal, but
yeah,
I mean that was fine. My cash on cash is still good, and it was still cash flowing 700 a month. But it, you know, it yeah, appraisals start coming in light. I mean, it's going to start screwing up the fix and flip game.
yeah, yeah. I think the allure of difficult to finance properties is, I mean, because inventory is so tight. I'm not saying to shy away from the difficult to finance properties, but instead you need to see them as an advantage. When properties are facing financing challenges, competition dwindles, right? And we step in to seize that opportunity. We embrace the complexities and intricacies to the deal itself, knowing that the underwriting expertise sets us apart in navigating that terrain. Um, I had a discussion with a client, and I'm going to jump to Justin next. I had a client just recently. She wants to buy this two-family house, but then there's an opportunity to put a mixed use warehouse to the property. I'm like, listen, do the loan on the two family, buy, renovate it, hold it. And if you have an extra 50 grand from an unsecured business line of credit or something like that, that might be your advantage in placing that warehouse to create extra revenue. But you better figure out how to pay that 50,000 to build out that warehouse to add that onto that property separately. Does the cash on cash make sense? Seizing a value add opportunity, they're out there, but you got to be realistic to what lending parameters are there. You might be spitballing on something and then it might not bear any return or make any sense. Justin, good morning and welcome. Brief overview who you are, what you do, and thoughts to our discussion this morning, the master of art of underwriting real estate.
Yeah, good morning, Joe, and good morning, Joe. Yeah, I'm Dustin Jefferson in the Southern Louisiana market. A little rough getting up this morning, but that's okay, man. I should have monitored my intake of tequila yesterday on Good Friday. Shame on me. But anyways, yeah, this is Joe. I mean, guys, this is everything. I mean, underwriting your deals, that's how you check to see if you got a deal. I feel like there's several layers of the underwriting, what I consider now like the underwriting process, right? Because even when you're analyzing a deal simply in your head, you're looking at a deal, you drive by it, you're like, I know the area well enough to say, well, if I could get this house for 50K, um, it might be worth a deal. In my mind, that's the first stage. You just mentally underwrote that deal in your head, but please don't think that's where it stops, right? or that you cover much ground, because the next phase you need to understand how much you're going to pay for the debt if you're accumulating debt for that to make that purchase, right? You're going to have to consider the potential of that property, long term and short term, right? So you can be confident in whatever exit strategy you need to put together to have for that deal. And so underwriting is full on preparing for anything you can't really encounter at that time. I mean, down to the instances, the examples you guys were just mentioning, your insurance and these and other things. I mean, it's not a bad idea to like if you live, where I live, it's not a bad idea to underwrite a scenario or two where, let's say, well, you should always underwrite the scenario of vacancy. But a lot of times, let's underwrite the scenario of a hurricane coming and destroying my houses. What does it look like for that 6 month period for my tenant? Do they have the renter's insurance they need? Do I have the insurance? Does my insurance cover a place for them to stay so they can come back and continue paying me my monthly rent? How are these things going to work out in adverse situations? Because these are the times I feel like most investors and anybody, even the more experienced people, run into issues and get derailed. And having lack of controls over the things that come up, we have little control over, right? But we can put shortstops in place and be consistently monitoring what we have, to protect ourselves from.
Justin, you brought up some good points, like some key factors like property location and market conditions, condition of the property, the estimated cost of repairs, your GC background obviously facilitates a lot of that. Really understanding what the amount of down payment is based on what you're trying to buy. I had a conversation with a client this week, and he had one rehab completed. He did a second rehab, but he lives in the property, so I can't consider that. So he only has one true rehab till he moves out of that condo and rents it. It's not a completed rehab because he owner occupies it in the eyes of asset-based lending. So based on that, I was able to get him around 83% loan to cost on purchase, at 100% on construction, on two families looking at. And he's going to have to bring 15 to 17% on the purchase price, and then give him 100% of the construction money. And his pricing was really not bad. It was like 10.25, 10.56 or something like that, and maybe $2,500 in origination. But it made sense to him. I said, listen, you get that second deal done. You get that third deal done. Now you're getting 90% on purchase and 100% on construction. So you got to understand you're not going to get the kitchen sink deal one. It's just not going to happen, right? You got to understand what your credit score looks like for construction financing and also DSCR. Listen, can you do a DSCR loan with a 660 credit score or better? Yes. Are the rates going to be worse than something at a 700 score? Is the LTV going to be lower? Yes. Okay. So the credit score really to be at in Burr or refinance or purchase or construction renovation, it has to be 680 or better, because that's where the threshold is. Understanding the credit score, understanding experience in underwriting is very important. How many rehabs have you completed to hold in the last 48 months? It's a number. It's not a story, it's a number. How many rental properties do you currently own? It's a number. It's not a kind of number, it's a number. How many flips have you completed in the last 48 months and sold? That's a exact number. That's not a kind of number. Okay. Understanding also that people don't take in consideration what Joe and Justin brought up, expected rental income and vacancy rates. Nobody is thinking that their place is going to be empty for 3 months before they rent it to their first tenant. Who's paying that mortgage? Who's covering that overhead? Who's paying the taxes? Who's paying the insurance? Who's paying the heat? Who's paying the water? Bills still continue whether the property's occupied or not. And the terms of the loan, any special features? I mean, what is the prepayment penalty to the property? Is it 5 4 3 2 1? Is it 4 3 2 1? Is it 3 2 1? Is it 2 1? 1 year, no prepayment. How does that rate reflect? Right? Do you want an interest only? Do you want a fully amortized loan? These are things you have to think about. Or are you going to own the property for 2 years, 3 years, 7 years, 30 years? You got to think about what that looks like. You can't expect the rates are going to come flying back down in your favor just because you want that to happen. That's an unexpected anomaly. Okay. Also, you got to think about some underwriting concerns, like how you look at it. You could, what if the place doesn't rent quickly? Could you potentially default if you don't have the right reserves? Impact of rising interest rates on loan payments. Right now, rates are staying extremely level. I don't think the Fed's going to do much. I mean, even if they drop the Fed rate by a quarter point, is that really going to impact your rate as an investor that much? No. And then understanding obviously repair costs and payment methods to maintenance groups or management companies. Risk associated with investing in a property in a particular area, whether it's a class A, B, C, D, E, or F. Okay, you got to understand what that impact's going to look like. Joe, some additional thoughts to the mastering the art of underwriting real estate from some of the discussions that Justin and I are having so far with you.
Yeah, Joe. So one thing that you mentioned, right, the rate, right, and the Fed raising or lowering rates, a quarter point doesn't make that much difference, right? And I think that we should do a class once, and really just from my education, right, that the 10-year Treasury bond really kind of controls the rates, and the Fed's relying on that. So, I think that just everybody, homeowners, investors, all need to understand that how the rates are actually dictated. It's not necessarily dictated by the Fed. That adjustment is based on how the banks loan each other money. The institutional banks loan the other banks money. And I think that'll help investors understand. And as we talked, I think last week, right, you look at the rate, and a quarter point difference or half a point difference only amounts maybe to 20, not even $50 a month. And if your deal is that tight, it's not a deal to go at, right? And again, underwriting is something that there should just be a class on how to do it. Know your numbers and to be explained out.
So you're saying I should have an underwriting class, Joe? Is that what you're saying?
I think you should. I think it's beneficial for everybody.
Okay.
To not just a newbie investor, it's just even the veteran investors. Maybe you haven't bought a property in a year or two, and you're looking to get back in it. I mean, there's just so many tactics that have to be looked at, right? And every strategy has a different way of underwriting, right? One thing that we really don't talk about here is wholesaling. That's a whole other set of underwriting, right? Because you have to leave meat on the bone for the buyer.
Yeah. Yeah, there's definitely devil in the details, whether it's, the business plan, the documents of the assignment. Is there a cost benefit of paying X dollars to get this property, and how long will it take you to make that money back? Nobody thinks about, okay, if I have money stuck in the deal, Joe, how long will it take me to make that money back? Like, what is the cash on cash return to get me to an infinite return on that property? Nobody wants to think about that. They just say, okay, I'm going to pay 20 grand in an assignment fee. I'm buying it at this number. They're telling me the repair cost of this number, and the after repair value is another number. Nobody thinks about the 20 grand assignment fee or whatever the assignment fee is, because that, to me, you need to put that into your repair numbers as a justification expense or a contingency to the repair numbers, because you're paying that money up and above the repair costs, right? So if that numbers don't jive, that's where you have to have what are your financial goals? There's a human element to this, right? You need that due diligence and mastering the art of underwriting is understanding the financial goals of the client, having open communication. Like I've had deeper discussions with clients over the last several weeks and understanding their challenges and the opportunities to a deal. right? And understanding what they're taking the use of the funds for. They're taking this cash out. What are they going to do with it? Are they going to go buy a motorcycle, or are they going to go buy more properties? And then what's the repayment plan on that money? Like, are they making money from the money they're putting out somewhere else? And is it going to justify? Like I had a discussion with a client yesterday, and I'm like, this two-family house is a really nice two-family house. And like, you might want to buy your partners out and hold this property. I think this is going to be a solid opportunity for you for the next 10 to 15 years. He goes, yeah, I know. I said, listen, you know what? There's only one property I regret selling because this is when I had my stroke. I wasn't sure what was going on. I had two other partners. I should have bought them out. It was a great property, and it was one regret that I didn't buy them out and kept the property. And I still regret not buying that property. I enjoyed that property because it was right near a train station, great little neighborhood. It was a place I would live at. That's the kind of place I wanted to own for the next 10 or 15 years. I just wasn't physically and mentally, in place to understand to take them out on that deal. Like I just didn't have the physical energy to do it. But that was the only one regret. And I was explaining that to him, and he's like, I'm going to think about this. Maybe I could have them hold a soft second. Once you do the refinance, and I could pay them off, and I could keep this property. I think it's going to appreciate 5 to 10%, every couple of years. I think I'll make my money back pretty quick. And I agreed with him. Justin, some thoughts to that, in just having more open communication. Are you having more open communications with your power team when you're looking at deals now differently than say 2 or 3 years ago, based on successes and failures?
Yeah, absolutely. I was, when you were just talking, I was about to bring up the duplex example that I just sold and kind of why we sold it. But I also want to like just kind of throw it in. And I'll probably just shoot you a text, Joe,
Yeah.
because what you just said, right, is really impactful. And it just me adding that to my to my library of thoughts and strategies, right? You were just both of you guys were speaking of buying out your partners later on, having that, and in you may be in a place right now where look, I need partners to get into this deal. It's a great deal. It's in a wonderful location. It's lucrative, like you said. I could imagine me going there, staying there.
Justin, you're coming in. There you are. There you
And
are.
that's a way to
You're back. Yeah, I lost you for a minute. I lost you for a minute.
okay, yeah. No, I was saying that's a great way to get into things portfolio when when you're exactly in the best position, right, to take it on by yourself. And then maybe later on, if you feel like you will control and you're in a better financial situation. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
Or no?
you're fine.
Okay, yeah, and you are in a better financial situation. I think it would be ideal to, like you said, have a strategy where you're able to buy your partners out. So I just wanted to amen that. But on the comments earlier, look, me and my guy that I guess was partnered with on actually had a bond for deed or seller finance contract with this duplex that I just sold about 2 months ago. But I can the way we kind of do things, I kind of consider us somewhat partners on some levels. A whole bunch of different definitions to that. But anyways, what is we came up to the conclusion that this property is about 100 years old. Okay, um, it's it's to the point where the amount of money that we would need to put into it to get the maximum amount of revenue in its location and other things over time would not be worth it. We would almost be making no money over the next 15 years, which is absolutely absurd. So it wasn't something that we even wanted to have in the portfolio at all anymore. He has a couple of other lots, so what we've decided to do is build on those lots. And it's up to the builder slash developer, which is going to be my role, to build something that's affordable, but will allow us to yield the profit and the long-term cash flow that we want, and really just a chess piece, right? Because whether or not we hold it for longer than 5 years is still up in the air, but we definitely want to hold it for a year or so, cash flow and cash out. So this strategy is based on what we see in the market, changes in the market, and what our costs may look like in the future just to maintain a property enough to have a tenant in there. So it didn't make sense.
Yeah, it's funny. You're helping me think about something. A mortgage is not bad debt if it's making money. If it's performing, it's good. It's not even bad. It's not debt. It's positive cash flow. So you can't look at a mortgage as debt. You got to look at it. Is it good money making opportunity to have that leverage on that property? Is it making money? And, understanding the competitive landscape to understanding how does that mortgage make sense and compete in that market, right? Is it profitable? Is that changing your bottom line in liquidity and financial stability? You have to look at the financial risk, assessing the financial stability by analyzing those numbers. Does that make sense? That $400 or $500 a month in your pocket, as Joe was saying, go to AC or Vegas. I'd prefer obviously Vegas, but if you're allocating that money for escrow, for vacancy, for uh, deferred maintenance, for management, and you're self-managing, what do you do with that money at the end of the year? You should if it's not been prorated back into the property, you should be looking at that money to put into another property to create more profitability, more cash flow, better financial stability, better profitability. And then your debt load is not debt load, it's positive cash flow. You gotta uncover the hidden values in underwriting a piece of real estate, short term and long term. You know, are you holding the property for the next 10 to 15 years? Is it a place where you would live in? That's the kind of rentals I like. If that rental is a place I would want to live in, that's the kind of property I want to own. Okay. I don't want to be in a market where I wouldn't want to feel safe walking around. It's just not, I'm not that type of landlord anymore. I don't need to be. Okay. I look at the cost benefit of my time, my value, my investment. Do I make mistakes? Absolutely. We're all human beings. We're allowed to make mistakes. Okay. But you need to learn from your mistakes. And I think being evaluating and underwriting multiple properties at the same time, instead of just looking down one lane, you got to kind of look at the bigger picture of things. Joe was kind enough to introduce me to a licensed real estate agent, and she's trying to get into the industry from an investor perspective. She made a lot of people a lot of money other than herself, and she realized she was getting screwed on every one of the deals. So she was very focused on doing high end. I'm like, how's that working out for you? She goes, well, all the people that I did all these high end deals with are broke now. I said, well, does that make a lot of sense to stick to something that everybody's broke on, or does it make sense to look at things a little differently? And she smiled and giggled, and I'm like, listen, you're telling me you want to do all this high end, but everybody that you know that did it are broke, and the people that are buying the small under the radar deals, they got plenty of money and they got plenty of cash flow. So why are you trying to not look at other opportunities? Well, it's not my style and blah blah blah. It was all bullshit. Listen, at the end of the day, okay, I'm not saying to go bottom feed, but there's opportunities in the low hanging fruit markets surrounding a lot of these urban metro cities. Okay, you gotta lift some rocks and look at some opportunities. Okay, there's definitely some opportunities out there. Follow the migration rental reports. They all justify the power of these numbers. You know, the rental market was sloping down a little bit by the end of the year. It's now curving back up because you're starting to see a lot of really good class B, A rentals hitting the market in that build to rent in that multifamily space. People want to feel secure where they live. They don't want, I mean, Joe sent me an article where people are breaking into houses, man. There's some crazy shit that's going on out there. People want to feel safe where they live. They want to have all the amenities. They want to feel satisfied where if they're going to rent and not take ownership, they want to enjoy themselves. They want to enjoy where they live. They don't want to feel uncomfortable, right? Nobody wants to feel uncomfortable. That's why you're seeing migration movement to the Midwest, to the Southwest, to the Southeast. Safety, crime stats, uh, level of entry of living below your means. Um, and that takes a lot of underwriting. I mean, you know, depending on what market you're in, you really need to understand dollars and cents. That's why we're the only club on this clubhouse and probably one of the only podcasts out there that are just providing complimentary underwriting tools, worksheets. I'm even willing to provide you a pricing size where you could price your own deals out, where you could price it out where you can see what it's going to cost you and why, right? Understanding repair cost breakdown and breaking it down and re-breaking it down. Understanding after repair value, understanding repair costs, understanding the cost to the money and the profitability to the property. And we're now offering workshops, and we're offering continuing education subjects in the asset-based lending space because that's where this market's going. It's not going to be in the traditional lending space. It's not going to be local banks and credit unions. I mean, there was 300 more closures of banks over the last year. Okay, the hedge fund lenders are here. They're present. They're going to put more money into the industry than anybody else. And you have to recognize that. You have to recognize what an underwriter looks at from an asset-based lending space if you're going to be an investor, a real estate investor in this market. Joe, some final thoughts to underwriting, mastering the art of underwriting real estate.
Joe, great room, great topic as always. And I think you got a couple other topics that would come out of here, right? I mean, one would be talk about partnerships, right? Do you need them?
Yeah.
There's been a couple of people's newbies and otherwise that have these partnerships and they start complaining about the partner, and then the question is, well, why do you have them as a partner?
Yeah.
And they don't really know why. It's more of a comfort thing. So, know what's going on in the market around you, right? You talked about, do I follow the trends that are going on with the rentals? I do, but I also take a look at what's going on in the economy as a whole. The unemployment rates, the revisions to the unemployment rates, which I would argue is more important than the actual numbers that come through to inflate the market. You have a responsibility as a landlord to know the local politics. Joe, you say it all the time. Have you gone to a meeting, a board meeting or a community board meeting with the local politicians? So, you say that all the time, right?
Absolutely. Like, when's the last time you've been to a zoning meeting where you own a property? How do you not go?
No, I haven't been.
Oh, I'm trying to give you a little Italian guilt right before Easter.
Yeah, there you go. But no, you're right. I need to go. And I should go, knowing exactly what's going on in the area. And let me tell you, that heart to heart that you had with our mutual friend, I got a call yesterday, and I think that you made some breakthroughs with it. So kudos to you, because you're going to help someone be more successful in their life than what they really thought they were going to be.
Well, because that partnership was horseshit, and we know that. The only person that was making money was the guy, the person controlling the strings. And this is the irony. She was doing all the legwork and getting zero recognition of any ownership in the LLC. Like, why would you do that? Like, I would be like, listen, I'm doing all this elbow grease. I want 20% ownership so I can show that I have transactional experience in these transactions. Like, how? I mean, I'm not saying that it was stupid, but like, you gotta, if you're gonna have a partner, you gotta iron that out in the operating agreement. And why? Because right now, if you don't show ownership in transactions, you have zero experience. She now has to restart to prove that she has experience because she had nothing clinging on to in an operating agreement justifying she had ownership in any of these transactions that she did for others. It was ridiculous.
Yeah, but yeah, no, good stuff. Good room, Joe.
Thanks. Hey, Justin, some final thoughts to mastering the art of underwriting real estate. Justin, are you there? I think Justin's a little caught up with some stuff.
I'm here, Joe. I'm sorry.
No, it's all good. Any final thoughts to our discussion this morning, mastering the art of underwriting real estate?
Yeah, just real quick. I said, man, your numbers are everything. Your underwriting is everything. You really just want to kind of try to imagine every scenario you can imagine. And if you think you're missing something, ask your lender and ask your professional friends, and just, don't be closed-minded to creative strategies. And I'm not talking about the typical creative strategies. I'm talking about, just like I said, partnerships, and setting those up correctly, like you were just saying. So underwriting is all a part of that, and it's all about checks and balances and crossing your T's and dotting your I's. And that's my comments this morning, Joe.
Thank you, Justin. Joe and Justin, thank you for it was a very glitchy clubhouse this morning, kind of threw me off a little bit in starting the podcast. I thought I was the only guy in here. Listen, you have to have an underwriting process to understand the collateral impact, short and long term, on any asset. Okay. You need worksheets to better pencil your deals down. You got to become a smarter professional in your space, whether you're a wholesaler, whether you're a licensed real estate agent, whether you're a real estate investor, whether you're a banker, whether you're an insurance agent, title agent, whoever you are, you need to become brilliant in what you're doing, okay? Because it can impact your bottom line forever. I know people that have never recovered from some really bad stuff that happened in 2008. Okay. I saw it. I saw it happen. Okay. I don't want to see it happen again. That's why we take underwriting precautions and have deeper discussions with our clients. That's why we're out there networking and meeting and greeting people and going over deal after deal and going after transaction after transaction. This is very important stuff. You're not buying bicycles here or buying a puppy. You're buying a physical home to expect a return on your money and expect somebody to pay you rent to make your profit and give you a bottom line of cash on cash return. It's basic mathematics. So we're here every Saturday and Sunday morning. We're the Creative Birth Strategy podcast and house here on Clubhouse, as well as all the social media buckets, such as Spotify, Buzzsprout, YouTube. I think we're on X now. We're on Facebook Live. I want to thank our great sponsors. We have Perkatech, Yardell Perkins, our social media strategist, MB Capital, our unsecured business line of credit referral program. We have Landmark Capital, where I'm an asset-based lender and senior loan advisor, and Realty 4-in-1, our national publication collaborator with Linda Pelagas, which we have events throughout the country. We're one of the only clubhouse that has consistent events throughout the country. We've had events in LA, Dallas, Texas, Fort Lauderdale, Florida, Denver, Colorado, now Philadelphia for the second time, New York. We're here to provide education, networking, and creating opportunities. We have great moderators that come up and step up every Saturday and Sunday. We'll be here tomorrow on Easter as well. Very looking forward to that as well, 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time. And and again, if there's an opportunity that you need to get yourself out there in front of people, we'll also facilitate putting together a marketing podcast interview with you and get it out there in front of our network and our publication as well. And my thought this morning, I always like to put a quote out there. I am two of the most important, powerful words, for what you put after them shapes your reality. This is Joe Scarice, founder and host of the Creative Birth Strategies House and podcast. I thank you for listening in and staying engaged. This is now our 25th episode on our podcast. I want to thank everybody, and we're going to keep moving this forward. I'll be back tomorrow morning at 9:30 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, and have a beautiful Saturday morning. I'll be ending the room in the next 30 seconds. Thank you.